On the night of the 8th of August, 1996, in Dartmouth, Nova Scotia, a small local hospital's emergency room, the kind of place that might see a handful of patients on a slow night, suddenly has 85 people walk through its doors at once. All of them are disoriented. Some are convinced they're dying. One of them is James Cameron, in the middle of directing what will become, at the time, the most expensive movie ever made. Cameron himself has confirmed this story publicly more than once, calling it 100% true, and, in his own words, admitting he hasn't truly lived until he's been high on PCP, which he immediately clarifies he does not recommend to anyone, which is a strange thing for a world-famous director to have to say about the making of Titanic, but here we are. Rewind a few hours. It's the very last night of shooting in Nova Scotia, before the whole production packs up and heads to Rosarito, Mexico, where the massive scale model of the ship itself is waiting, along with the actual stars of the film. What's being filmed in Canada is only the present-day framing story. The modern-day salvage scenes featuring Bill Paxton's character, which means Leonardo DiCaprio and Kate Winslet, aren't even on set for any of this. They're going to miss the entire incident entirely. Cameron, by his own admission and by the accounts of people who worked with him, was not an easy man to work for on this shoot. The budget had already ballooned past $200 million, the schedule was under constant pressure, and Cameron had a reputation for losing his temper the moment anything threatened either. The day before this particular night, a crew member gets fired after causing some kind of ongoing trouble with the local catering staff. Accounts differ on exactly what the trouble was, but it was enough to get the person let go on the spot. Whoever that fired employee actually was, the leading theory, and it remains only a theory to this day, is that they wanted payback not necessarily against Cameron personally, but against the catering operation that had, in their eyes, gotten them fired. So, at some point before the crew's midnight meal break, someone pours roughly a full pound of PCP phencyclidine, also known as angel dust, a drug that can produce hallucinations, numbness, extreme confusion, and in some people, something closer to psychosis, into a massive pot of clam chowder that's about to be served to the entire crew. Around midnight, the crew breaks for their meal. Roughly 80 to 85 people sit down to eat, including Bill Paxton. Cameron eats separately in his trailer with Paxton, each of them getting their own bowl from the same batch. Cameron heads back to set afterward, expecting to keep filming. Instead, he finds it completely empty. Nobody's come back from the break. While he's standing there confused about where his entire crew has gone, the drug hits him, his vision starts tunneling, his arms go numb, and he assumes, reasonably enough, that he's got food poisoning. He goes looking for the on-set medic and instead finds his crew in complete disarray. Dozens of people disoriented, panicking, and completely unaware they've all just ingested a serious hallucinogen. Production scrambles to organize an evacuation, loading the sickest looking people into vans headed for the nearest hospital in Dartmouth. Cameron and Paxton, both feeling the effects themselves by now, go along with them. Within a short time, this small local ER built to handle a normal night's trickle of patients has 85 new arrivals at once. Almost all of them severely disoriented, none of them explaining themselves particularly coherently. Staff quickly figure out that everyone ate the same chowder, and given what they're seeing, they land on the worst plausible explanation available to them: paralytic shellfish poisoning, a real and genuinely dangerous condition. A doctor reportedly warns the room that this kind of poisoning can be fatal, and that people might want to call their families, which, combined with a room full of people already experiencing drug-induced panic, produces exactly the reaction you'd expect. Tears, frantic goodbye phone calls, people curling up in corners convinced they're about to die. It takes a while, but eventually some of the more experienced partygoers in the crew start comparing notes and realize what's actually happening to them isn't poisoning, it's a high. And once that realization spreads, the entire tone of the emergency room flips almost instantly. People start asking for root beer floats from a fast food place they'd passed on the drive over. Someone gets their hands on a guitar. A conga line reportedly forms and winds its way down the hospital corridor. Grips commandeer wheelchairs and start racing them through the halls. One crew member later described Paxton sitting in the hospital hallway, by all appearances, just quietly enjoying the ride. At some point, according to how the night is usually retold, someone hallucinating hard enough grabs a pen and, for reasons nobody's ever fully explained, stabs Cameron in the face with it. Cameron, far too high at that point to be properly alarmed by his own bleeding, apparently just finds the whole thing funny. Eventually, hospital staff put the real picture together and start administering liquid charcoal to try to flush the drug out of everyone's systems, which solves one problem and immediately creates another. Liquid charcoal causes nausea and diarrhea, and a small rural hospital simply does not have enough bathrooms for dozens of people experiencing that simultaneously. Toilets fill up fast, people start using sinks, some resort to trash cans. The chaos runs almost until sunrise, with people finally starting to come down around 8 a.m. And then, because film productions don't stop for anything, everyone is expected back on set that same day to finish the scenes they hadn't gotten through the night before, running on zero sleep and whatever was left of a PCP hangover. Once Nova Scotia wraps, the production moves on to Mexico to begin the massive ship sinking sequences with DiCaprio and Winslet, who never knew any of this happened until they heard about it afterward like everyone else. Police in Halifax investigate for years, working through theories that circle back repeatedly to the fired employee and the caterers, but they never gather enough to charge anyone. The case is formally closed in February 1999, unsolved, and stays that way for decades, closed enough that even the original police report has stayed sealed from the public until fairly recently, when a Nova Scotia privacy commissioner ordered it released nearly 30 years later. To this day, nobody has ever been officially named as the person who spiked the chowder. Titanic went on to become one of the biggest movies of all time, and for years, this whole night barely got talked about, buried under all the other stuff. The sinking sets, the massive budget, the 11 Oscars it won. It's really only recently, mostly because Cameron finally started talking about it himself, that people even found out one of the most expensive movies ever made got derailed for a night because the entire crew accidentally got dosed with angel dust in a hospital hallway. That's the story. If you want more like this, hit subscribe, new one coming soon.